Hello, everybody. Good morning. I hope you can hear me and you can see my screen. Hello, guys. Somebody please confirm so that we can start.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay, so today we'll be talking about how to connect our Express application to a database. All right. So that instead of writing to file or having our server be stateful, which is not part of what is advised when you're writing a REST API. We're going to remove our database from the application state and store it in a database. All right, so that we don't lose our data when the server restarts. Before we do that, I want to be sure that you guys are comfortable with the concept of classes in JavaScript or inheritance. Okay, inheritance, we go from prototypal inheritance to classes. So I want to confirm that in your OOP class, you have been taught how to work with classes and prototypes. Although we'll not be doing a lot of that, right? But it's something that would make what we are about to do look familiar to you. All right, so let's proceed. So we have our application. Let's create story training. Let's do Express. Okay. All right. So we have our server.js and we have let's initiate npm. Initialize. See. Okay. So we'll do npm init try. Right. And there you go. So I'm going to be introducing a new way of structuring our project. All right. So I'm going to have something called SRC, like the source folder. All our source codes are going to be in here. All right. Server.js will be here, but every other source code will be here. All right. So the last time we talked about the MVC framework, all right, which has to do with model, views, and controllers. Okay. That is the MVC. Okay. But in this case, we are just creating a server that serves JSON, right? So JSON is our view. So what the user gets back is JSON. That's why I say JSON is our view. So if we're sending back a HTML page to the user, that will be the view. All right. So all HTML pages will be stored here. Okay. So every of that template, HTML, POG, whatever templating engine you're using, the files are going to be stored in this views folder. But in this case, we're not serving views. All right. We're serving JSON back to the user. So we might not need this folder. Okay. So I'm going to delete it. All right. So I have models and controllers. Okay. And then the last time we did something called app.js, and this was where we had Express installed. So I want to install Express and Mongoose. This is what we would use to communicate with our database. That's the package Mongoose. All right. So I'm installing Express and Mongoose. All right. So there we go. Let's configure our server. That should be something that everybody's familiar with by now. Require HTTP. And we simply need to get our app from the app src src/app. Okay. So we'll do server is equal to http.create server, and we'll pass in app. And here we do server.listen and the ports. So let's make the port a variable. Say port equals, let's say 5,000. All right. And then we pass our port in here. And the next thing to do is to, if you like, add this callback and say server listening on ports template strings so that we can interpolate ports there. And I think that should be all for our server. So we'll come to app.js and we need Express, require Express, right? And then we create our Express app by calling the Express function. And then we say app dot get everything we need with app. All right, so let's do app dot use, and that will be express.json, if I'm correct, so that we convert all our request body to JSON. That's a middleware. So you declare your middlewares. Let me put my comment here. Middleware. All right, all middlewares will be declared here. And then we do routes, one routes, and we export. So module.export app. So we're exporting app out of here and using it here. So let's see, I'm going to install NodeMon, but this is going to be save --save dev, because it should be a dev dependency. All right, so I have NodeMon installed, and I have to tell.
You didn't install NodeMon.
Is that?
You didn't install NodeMon.
Oh, I did not. Let's see. npm install. Oh, thank you so much. NodeMon, yeah. All right, so we have it now. Thank you. So I have to tell my package or my node project to use NodeMon. All right, to run my server. So you can do something like this. This is always a good thing to do. So start, because when you deploy your app, the server is going to be running the start command. So you don't want to use NodeMon, which wouldn't be installed in the server, all right, because it's a dev dependency. Okay. So in production, the server will be trying to use NodeMon, which would cause problems. So just use Node for start, and then this should be start dev. All right. So when working locally, you use start dev to run your project. In production, you use start. So that start runs Node and you start dev runs NodeMon. All right. So I'm gonna save. And if everything I've done so far is correct, then we should be good. So I'm going to say, let me get rid of this guy. So I'm going to say npm run All right, start is a recognized command, but start dev is not. So I'm going to use run. You could use start directly with npm, but since this is not a recognized command, I'm going to run it with the run. Okay, so npm run start dev, and yeah, my server is running. Okay, so let me test if it works, or just run. So in my app.js, I'm going to handle app.get request with this guy, request. I'm going to respond best.json. I'm going to say application, so message application running. Okay. And if we open our Thunder client, I'm going to try to get 5,000. Get requests and application running. Cool. All right. So we are here. So how do we connect to MongoDB? All right. So we're going to connect with MongoDB, making use of Mongoose. Okay. I have to pause and say something here to get everybody comfortable. So your folder files icon displaying like that. Okay, it's an extension I installed. All right, so let me make something clear to you guys. There is core JavaScript. I don't know if I said it during the last class, but there is core JavaScript, and then there are APIs. Okay, some will call it packages, some will call it APIs or stuff like that. And I've told you that API means application programming interface. So if it allows you connect to another program, it is an API. It must not be something that you call using localhost / or like this. All right, these are called endpoints, in fact. Okay, it must not be something like this before you call it an API. This confuses a lot of beginners. As long as it allows you to connect to another program, talk to another program, it is an API. All right. That being said, there are APIs and then there is core JavaScript. When you learn core JavaScript, you will know how to interact with JavaScript APIs. So the learning curves are different. All right. When you learn JavaScript, for instance, you know how to interact with the Node API. So what we're making use of now is the Node API. HTTP is a core Node.js API. All right. So there are different Node APIs. What does it do? It allows you to program for Node.js. All right. In the browser, you learn JavaScript and you use JavaScript to connect, to talk to the DOM, right? Document Object Model. What does the DOM do? The DOM is the guy that talks with the browser. All right. The guy that renders the pages that you see is the DOM. So you can use JavaScript to talk to the DOM. You can also use JavaScript to talk to the web APIs, right? Fetch is a web API. So when you use fetch, you are not writing JavaScript in that sense. When you use fetch in the browser, you're not writing JavaScript, right? You are writing JavaScript, but you are talking to an API, all right? A JavaScript API that is in the browser. Now we have fetch in Node.js also, all right? But these are APIs that you talk to, okay? Now I said all that to say that Mongoose is another API that we're about to learn, okay? You must not let me try to frame that properly. You don't have to be a master of the syntax of an API, all right? You could be if you want to, but you should be comfortable with using the docs when dealing with third-party APIs. All right. For a start, use docs. Don't cram anything. JavaScript, you should know JavaScript. It should be like your second language. You should know it. You should be able to spin up JavaScript syntax from your head. All right. Even though also you don't need to cram, you will know it with time. But it is something very important that you should not procrastinate learning it. All right. But for things like Mongoose and all those stuff, there are APIs that come and go. You can decide to use something else tomorrow. So you don't have to be so invested in having this syntax inside your head. What happens is that naturally with time you are going to learn it, is you are going to know how to use it. And if you ever forget how to use it, open the docs. You should be comfortable with using docs. Open the docs and get the syntax from it. Okay. So having said that, so we'll be using Mongoose. What is Mongoose? It's an elegant MongoDB object modeling for Node.js. Okay. What it simply means is that it's an interface that helps us create models, all right, and documents for the MongoDB database. Okay. As simple as that. So let's learn how to use it practically. And then you can go and do your theoretical studies later on. Okay. So to use Mongoose, we're going to have to require it into our project. We need to require it in our project because it's an external what have you. So what we'll do is we can actually have Mongoose, run here. That means I'm going to say const, let me put it at the top. I'm going to say const Mongoose equals require Mongoose, okay, like this. And then mongoose.connect, okay. And then I'm going to provide a URL to my MongoDB server, all right, or MongoDB database. I'm going to provide the URL here, all right. And then I could listen for if that connection was successful or not. So I could do .then, and then, if it's successful, we all know that .then means the promise was resolved successfully. So you say console.log, database connected, all right? You do .catch because it's promise based, okay? So I'm going to say console.log error. So like this, I could easily connect to my MongoDB database. This is just what you need to connect to your database. As simple as that. But because of the concept of separation of concerns, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this code from here. So I did that just to show you that you can do it. It's acceptable. Some developers do that. But I'm going to separate mine and put it here. I would say DB, for instance. I could just come to source. All right. And what I could do is DB. And then inside of it, I'm going to have connect.js. Okay. So I could say const mongoose require mongoose. All right. And I'll do a function that says connect db, and to be an asynchronous function. All right. I'll say try. So I'm going to use try and catch block as opposed to then. All right, using the then and catch. So I'll say const connection should be equal to await this mongoose dot connect. All right, exactly what we did earlier. Then I'm going to go further to console.log connection successful. Okay, so I'm going to use a template string and say database connected. Okay, Then I could interpolate and make use of the connection, this connection now. All right, dot connection, which is this. All right, dot host. So I get the host from the connection. I just display it. Database connected and display the host. All right. But then if there was an error, I'll catch it here and console log that error. All right, and see an error occurred, or just say MongoDB connection error. All right, and then just spit out the error there. Okay, so this is good enough. So I'm going to say exports, module.exports, sorry, module.exports equals this function connectDB. All right, so I've separated my database connection code to a separate file. So I can come here over at the server file and then try to make use of my connection or try to establish a connection. So what we do is there's a missing piece here, right? Which is the connection string. So let's try to get that. So how do we get a connection string? We can do two things. We can go to Atlas, all right? MongoDB Atlas, sorry. All right, and create an account here. So if you create an account with Atlas, you are going to get a MongoDB cluster. So they have a free tier that you can make use of. Accept all cookies, okay. So they have a free tier that you can make use of. All right, and then you create a cluster. Get this string and create start connecting to it, right? So let's try. Let's do that. We could easily use a local connection, but let's just do this. All right. I'm trying to be very fast because of time, because there's another class by 12. Link my account. We'll switch your authentication method accessible. Well, you guys know me before. Oops. They caught me. So I have an account with MongoDB Atlas already. So let me try to create a new one. Or I'll go back and say, let's go back to Mongo Atlas. And let's do start free. Sign in with Google. Use this guy instead. All right. Okay, accept. All right, welcome. So yeah, what's next? Okay. What's the primary goal? What's your primary goal? Big project I have in mind. How long? Okay. So what programming language? I'm going to be using Node. JavaScript Node, okay. What types of data? Man, order. Optional. What will it be? Material application include? Not sure, please. Okay, finish. All right, so they are going to provision a cluster for us. I'm going to use the free tier. Provider, AWS, all that is fine. Cluster name, we can call it Zuri cluster. All right, and then if I say create, I'm gonna have to do this painful thing. Stairs, please verify once. All right, so username and password, you have to set all these. I'm going to delete this later, so it's okay that you see the password. So I'm going to copy my username and my password because I'll need it for later. Password, I'm going to copy to, and then say create user. All right. And then my local environment, enable access for any networks that need to read write. Okay. There's this IP address that we usually make use of. Okay, 0.0.0.0, I think so. /1, am I correct? Let me quickly research that. Allow connection from anywhere, IP. So IP address to allow connection from anywhere, MongoDB Atlas, okay? Let's see what that is. Somebody should give me this quickly. Yeah. So this is it. I'm correct. /0, 0.0.0.0/0. Okay. So let's /0. Okay. So yeah, add entry. And there you go. I can finish and close. Congratulations on setting up your access rules, blah, blah, blah. Go to overview. All right. So I think our cluster should take some time to provision. Let's see. Thank you. Get connection string. Okay, so this is our connection string. This is what we have been waiting for. So I'm going to copy this and copy from here, actually. Come back to our project and paste. All right. So this is like the link to connect to the database that we just created. All right, or the cluster that we just created. So I'm going to say done. So read here, it says replace password, which is what you see here. All right, with your password for the Tochukwu Austin as a local user. All right. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to say done. And let's check. Let's check to see where DAO. So I'm going to come here and replace password with the password that I copied. So I copied this password. And so I replace this guy with it. And every other thing should be fine, unless my app name. Okay, I can decide to change my database name. Right? So this database name is what will be used to identify my database. All right. So I could call it anything, but let's just call it books. No, we're going to call it shelf view. Shelf view. All right, so I'm going to use shelf view. And let's connect and see if our database will connect. So it's time to make use of this connect DB function. So I'll come back to the server and say require from DB src /db/connect. Okay. And immediately after here, that is before, after we create our server, we're going to call connect DB. Okay. Yes, fingers crossed. Everything works fine. Our database has been connected. All right, so database connected, and this is it. That's superb. All right, so since we have connected our database, how do we create documents. Now, perhaps you are coming from the SQL background, you know that we don't create documents, we create tables. But in MongoDB or NoSQL, what we create are documents, all right? So how do we create documents? We create documents by using schemas, all right? So we define schemas, and then we interact with the schema. Sorry, we interact with the model. Let me do this here so that I think I'm good. I might not have need of this anymore. Before we proceed, I'm going to show you something called .env. All right. So this .env package, we actually need it. Yes, you can see how needed it is. Weekly download of 37 million. All right, and more. So we actually need it to write environment variables. So what's an environment variable? So you store your environment variables in this .env file, all right? And then you create variables and values. For instance, I'm going to say db URL. I could say db URL, all right? Or connection string. You say db connection string equals to, so I'll bring my connection string from here, all right? I'll remove it from here and put it here, okay? All right, so now what I do is I'll save that. I'll come here and make use of process.env dot, what's the name, connection string. All right, so that's my connection string. So I'm now using what is called environment variables, okay? But you would see that this would not work. So there's an error here. The URI parameter to open URI must be a string. It got undefined because you can't just use process.env like this, all right, expecting that Node.js will just come to this file and get it. That's not how it works by default. By default, you have to have set this guy in the process by doing something like this. Process.env equals to, then you put the string, all right? Then you have set it, and then you can now use it, all right? But then that is not really efficient, and that's why we go for .env, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install that package. So let's open a new terminal, npm i.env, and just like that, I think then we come here. Let's go to the docs. So after saving, you go to your .env file, you save everything you need, and then you have to require .env config. Okay, so you have to require it like this. So I'm going to copy this, come here, and go to server and say require .env. So you don't have to save it in a variable, just require it like that. And just like that, you see that everything works again. Database connected, and we are connected to this cluster. All right. So that is something that I needed to do. The reason why I had to do that is because we have a sensitive data in this string. All right. So that data is my password, the password to our database. We don't want to have it inside our code. All right. We want to save it in this file. And this file would not be pushed to GitHub, right? It shouldn't be pushed to GitHub. So this is not a GitHub project yet because I've not initialized Git on this project. But if I have to initialize Git on this project and push it to GitHub, I would need to exclude this .env file from what gets to GitHub. All right. So assuming somebody was able to break into our code base, they will not be able to get sensitive data like this because it is stored somewhere else. All right, not in the code base directly. Okay, so that's how it works. All right, so you can do more research on, we are short for time, you can do more research on .env, all right? Why do I need a .env file? You can search for that and you get more understanding. Okay, so I think we have everything pretty set up by now. Let's talk about how to interact with databases now. So I'm going to bring Escalidraw out. And this is it. So you have a schema, something called a schema. Schema. I'm correct. I'm correct. I am. So I have a schema, and then from the schema, you create something called a model. What's up? What's up in? From the schema, we create something called a model. Sorry, hold on, guys. I need to set this platform to behave. Schema. Okay, and you create a model from a schema. So this is gonna be our model. Gonna be our model, and then you interact with your model. Okay, so the model is what your database, your documents are created from. All right, so you interact with the model. So let's see this in code. So what I need to do now is to create a schema. So you see why we had models, MVC, model view controller. The model has to do with communication with the database. All right, so what I'll do is I will create something called, assuming we are dealing with books. All right, so I'm going to say books.model, right, .js. Now, .model here is just a convention to let us know that this file is a model file, contains a model, all right? So it is not required. You could have said books.js and it would work, but .model is a convention that lets us easily identify what the file does. All right, we could do something like that to books.controller.js. All right, so you see, we have books file without us using the model keyword inside of it. We will not be able to, we'll have issues quickly identifying which one which of the books.js belongs to controller and which one belongs to JS. All right, so we do this to make that distinction. Okay, so I'm going to close this and let's talk about model for now. So I'm going to say const Mongoose to get my Mongoose, right? Require Mongoose. All right, and then I'll create a model. So I'm going to call this model book model. Sorry, schema. We create a schema first. Book schema. All right, mongoose.schema. And then I'm going to say we'll have title. So schema is simply us constructing the shape of our documents. All right. So this is title. I'm going to say my title is of type string. These are validators and is required. All right. Required is true. Okay. And then I'm going to say the book also should have an author and then the string. Okay. So if you see the difference between this and this is that I had more than one validation criteria. So I had to put it in an object. But if the criteria is just one, you can simply just write it here like this. All right. So then we're going to have gen raw or John raw, which is a string also. All right. So what we do is we now create a model. So we export, so we say module.exports equals to mongoose.model. So this is where we create the model. We're exporting the model directly. All right. So model, users, books. So books, we call the table books. And then we use this schema, books schema. So you can see that the model is created using a schema. All right. So it's just like saying every document that will be stored in our table, model is our table, stored in our table, all right, should use this schema. All right. That means the structure of the data of those documents should adhere to this instruction. That's what the schema does for us. So I'm going to save, and we can now go back to our server.js and start doing some cool stuff. So let's see. So let's handle some routes. We go back to server.js. Where are you? Here. No, app.js. That's where our routes are. So app.js. I'm going to say for post. So let's create something first. So post, when the user posts to /books, books. All right. We're going to get a request of body. So let me console the log and say rec.body to be sure what that is. Let's go to our Thunder client. Thunder client, and let's see, post to 5,000. We need title, has to be a string. We need author, and we need genre. All right, so title is going to be things all art author. I don't know who wrote it to. Is I think it's this guy. If I don't know his name. So let's do Chinua Achebe.
Achebe.
Yeah, things fall apart. Let's get the correct spelling of his name. Chinua Achebe. Yeah. So we go back here and put it here. Genre. Is this history, right? I think so. All right, so I'm going to use that, and we say send. So it says not found. So we're supposed to do /books, all right, and send, and we get back application running. That's fine because that's what we have in our code. So if you come back to app.js, you're going to see we are responding with application running. Well, let's check the console. All right, so you see that we have this guy in the console. So instead of just logging into the console, we want to actually save it to our database. So how do we do that? So we can do that by making use of our model to interact with our database. So we have to import our model. So I'm going to say const books equals require from models, all right, book.model, books.model, all right. So that's it. So we have our model right here. So what we do is we come into this post and say new book equals new. So you see that we're using this new keyword because this book is a class. All right, that's why I said that you need to understand what happens with classes and inheritance. Okay, so new books, we're creating an instance of this. So what we'll say is we'll pass in our data coming from the user, all right, which is rec.body. So I'm going to say rec.body directly, although you wouldn't do this directly, but let's just do that for simplicity for now. So rec.body, and we say await new book dot save. How this works. So you make this async if you have to use await inside of it. So let's save and let's put our fingers crossed. I'm going to do res.json this time, and let's respond with the new book. So let's just say saved. All right, equals. So we send back the saved book to the user. All right, I think that looks good. So let's try. Open Thunder client and send. So see, this is the save user returned, and everything happened successfully. So there was no error. So let's check our database now. Where DAO? This is the cluster. Project 0. Need to database. All right, so we have the Zurich cluster and we have a database inside of it. I think this is it. Okay. No, I browse collections. All right. So yeah, this is the right place to be. We have users. And there you go. Who created these guys? I'm coming. So we have books under tests, okay? So that's where we have it, books. So this is what we created from our application. Here, and you see that we are interacting with our model. So if you go from last to first, like go backwards, you will see that books is creating a new book, right? An instance of books, and then we are saving it to that instance, and that saves it to the model, right? Ensuring that whatever you are saving to the model adheres to this structure, all right? And then Mongoose does its work behind the scene, knowing that we are connected using this connected DB function to this database in this cluster using the connection string. And your data is sent over the wire to MongoDB Atlas. All right. So this is where you have your data stored. I don't have time. I would have been able to make the connection for those who are doing PHP. I would have been able to make the connection between how databases work in PHP and how it works in when you are using Node.js. All right, because it's the same idea working behind the scene. But for PHP developers, especially beginner PHP developers, they would think that their database is one with their code. All right, they always think that, oh, it just happens like that, especially when you are deploying a PHP application. Everything is in one place, right? You just get one host and then you have your database. You can set up everything in one place. But with Node.js, sometimes it can be confusing because your database can be with Atlas, your code could be with Heroku or AWS. You know, you can store things different at different places. If you are trying to store a file, you have to use a storage service to store a file in your server. So things like that, it makes it look different, but they are all the same. The difference is that if I'm talking about those who are coming from PHP now, if you're coming from PHP, everything is in one place. But with Node.js, they can be distributed, all right? Or you get a service like AWS that will have everything in one place, and then you have to still do different configurations, which seems to be more complex than what you have with PHP. Okay, so yeah, so these things are easy. You just have to take your time. As I would always say, go over the videos again, and it should make sense. If I've been following the classes and you are comfortable with asynchronous programming, this should not cause any confusion. We are simply doing async await. Try and catch works with asynchronous code. In case there's any error from this, all right, it's going to be caught by this other block. All right, that's what we're doing here. Go back to the models, nothing special. This is the Mongoose API. This is Mongoose syntax. If you ever forget it, you can just go to the Mongoose, what's it called now? Documentation side, and you'll see codes there that you can make use of. All right. So this is the Mongoose connect. This is the connection string, but this is a local connection. So we're not connecting to an external, a remote cluster. So we're connecting locally. All right. You can do that with something called Atlas. So you see, I just passing a URL here, do a connection, and I start listening for request to that. So I can do something now. Let's do /books. Let's try this. /books connect. And if I go to my code, so I'm going to come here and change this to, I'll change this to this. All right. So we're now connected to localhost. Are you seeing that? So if I go back to Thunder client and send, it works. If I come back here, I should have books and I should have my book inside of it. So when developing locally, this is advisable. But if you are developing with a team, so for instance, you are trying to go through the video and just get everything done, this is advisable. It's easier to set up as you could see. All right. But if you are developing with a team, that means you have different persons scattered around the world. All right. What you're advised to do is to use that remote connection. So connect to Atlas. Everybody has that connection string and they are all talking to the same database. Okay. But if you are developing on your own, learning and trying to try out things yourself, use your local connection. All right, to do that. Okay. So how do you get this? Just simply type MongoDB Compass. All right, that's the name of this application, MongoDB Compass, and you can install it. All right, go to YouTube, how to install MongoDB Compass. Just you can install it on your own because we don't have time for those things. Okay, so I've shown you two options when developing MongoDB. You can connect using the remote connection string, or you can use a local connection. All right, so that is it. Everything works fine. Okay, so today we're just able to do saving to a database. In fact, I can actually, let's do this really fast. Can actually get from the database actually. So let's do rest.json. So this time we're going to try to, who is that? Who is if you have your mic open, please mute. Who is it? All right, thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're trying to get, right? So we'll do const all books, right? Equals to, we're going to await this and say book.find. So since we are awaiting, this needs to be asynchronous, right? And then we could say books found, and then say data or books, right? Of this works. So let's get. So we come back here, change this to get and send, and you see that, okay, not found. Yeah, that's true. So I'm going to call this books, okay, /books. So not found, and we try again. And yeah, we get all our books. So you see that this is an array. All right, the data is an array of books. So if we save another book into our database and call it What's this book? Anybody knows any book? Not a book fan. So let's do 12 rules for
Atomic
life.
Habits.
Sorry, I don't get that. 12, so let's do 12 rules for life. All right, by JP. I got Jordan P. Towson. Okay, save. And this is, what's the genre of this book? I don't know what the genre is of this book, but let's just say psychology. And I'm going to save, and that has been saved. Everything's coming in fine. And I'm going to get, and you see that we now have 2 books in our database, this and this. Now you will agree with me that because our database does not live inside the code, all right, in a variable or something like that, we can always get, and we're sure that our data is stored somewhere. So if I refresh, how do we refresh this guy? I'm going to refresh here with that button, and you see that we have 2 books now. 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson. Okay, so I'm going to build on this in subsequent classes. There is still a lot to learn, all right, when it comes to connecting or talking with the database. We need to know how to be able to find one. We just need one, so we can use any criteria to get it. Maybe the book title. We can even get a group of books. So all books on psychology, we want to be able to query for that. We want to be able to delete, we want to be able to update and stuff like that. So we can do that with Mongoose. But we are going to deal with that in the next class. Or perhaps if I have time, I could record videos to cover those and send it over. But if I don't, then in the next class, we're going to discuss that. And also, we're going to talk about validation. So we'll talk about our middlewares, all right? So we want to validate the book, what's it called now? Validate the schema or the structure of the book that is coming in before we even try to save it, instead of just trusting what is coming from the user and saving it directly to the database. That is disastrous. So we have to check what is in here and see that it is actually what we expect before we save to the database. So I'm going to be doing that in subsequent classes. And yeah, hope to see you in next class. Thank you guys for your time. I have to hand over this class link to the next instructor. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask a question?
I would have loved to take questions and even continue the class because, but then we don't have time, and the next instructor could be at the door as we speak. All right, so let me just even check Slack and see if there's a window for us.
Yeah, the class has been moved to 12:30, right? So,
All right, great. Okay, great. I just saw that now. All right, so let's take questions. You can go ahead.
All right, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Yes, when you said that we should just be using documentation for any damn API, looking at the documentations, sometimes you will find that there are some things that they use there and you won't use in your own code, or coding, or programming. So that makes the documentation somehow confusing for
Yeah, I get.
the beginner.
Yeah, I get you, right? So this is how you use documentations. When I started, I did it the hard way. I opened documentation, start from the start, reading towards the end. That was how I approached it. And it was a big waste of time. All right. From experience, I discovered it was a big waste of time. If I had a mentor or a teacher, maybe they would have advised me differently. So this is what I'm going to tell you. You use tutorials, right, to get an idea of what the programming language is about. And then you use documentation to learn more on what the tutorial has taught you. So I went ahead to teach you books.find, for instance, right? You can go to Mongoose and look for .find method. There's a lot to learn about .find. This is not all there is to .find, right? So .find is something that you know you are going to be using. Why not learn more about .find? So you go to the documentation and then you browse .find and you see a lot of things that you can do with .find. All right, that is what I mean by making use of documentation. So if you just go and open the documentation, you are reading, or you know, that's part of what constitutes tutorial hell. You keep learning and learning and learning, and then you don't even know where you're going. All right, but tutorials will give you direction. A mentor will give you direction on how to go. Okay, and then you use the documentation to learn more on the concepts that you have been taught. All right, so that's what I meant when I said use documentations. I hope that's clear.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
All right, so any other question? I would even like to show you guys something. Let me show you something. I used this during the last class. In case you don't know, Google Gemini. This is your friend. All right, I want to show you something. Tell me about the basic methods, or tell me about the basic. Let's say, tell me about how to set up a basic MongoDB, a basic Express project using MongoDB as the.
You're not sharing your screen.
I don't know. I don't think we can see your screen.
Okay, you can see my screen. Please hold on. Let me try to do that. You can see my. Okay, I stopped sharing. Oh, I was shocked. Like, you can't see my screen. Like, since when? So let me share again. This and this. So I'm sharing my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So I'm saying, tell me, this is Google Gemini. All right, gemini.google.com. I say, tell me about how to set up a basic Express project using MongoDB as the database of choice. All right. Be very okay. I'll say, make your explanation very simple. I'll say, using simple language and be concise. All right. Let me see if this prompt contains everything I need. Tell me about how to set up a basic Express project using MongoDB as the database of choice. Make explanation do your explanation using simple language and be concise. All right, with code samples as you go. I would prefer you use Mongoose as your ODM of choice. And I send that prompt. So this is what happens. So it tells me npm init y, right? Install dependencies. These are dependencies you need. Npm install express mongoose. And then you see your DB connection file. So this is what you should do. They are passing in some parameters here that you don't really need because Mongoose has improved their API, so you don't really need to pass this in. All right, and then everything else looks good. They are exiting when there's an error. That's something you can do. That means just stop the process and exit. All right, define a schema. So you see your schema here, right? task schema. All right. And then you export your model. And then you create your Express app. This is your Express app. You import your DB. As I did, you connect your DB. All right. And then you have your middleware there. But of course, in our own case, we separated this and we use the separate app file. But you see now, like you have like the basic stuff that you need to actually set up Mongoose. Now, I did not show you this tool for you to depend on it. I show you this tool for concise search. So instead of going to Google and searching a bunch of things and going about the place, just explain yourself. And it also depends on how good you are with actually explaining yourself and developing a prompt. Develop a prompt, give it to Gemini or GPT, and they will just do the rest for you. And what you can do now is now read what they have given to you. So this now tells you the process to create an Express app using MongoDB, Mongoose as your ODM. All right, your object data model. So you use this and then you now know how to do it. And this is enough for a basic, like a beginner who is trying to just know how to use Mongoose. This is enough. You do it, you expand on it. Oh, and now they just showed you how to set it up, right? They've not told you. In fact, they even told you how to interact with it. So task.find, I see now. So this gives you all tasks. You can now expand on this. Okay, if I can find, right, it means I should be able to update. It means I should be able to delete. How do I do that? You can ask further questions. You can say you give an example of how to find using the task model. Please go ahead to show more coding examples of how to perform basic fraud operations. I told you about what CRUD means, create, delete, right? So they've shown you post to add. All right, so you see, they're sending requests directly, which that's why you cannot use ChatGPT code for production. It's just to learn, right? Because you don't do this, you have to verify your object, what's going into your database, okay? And then, continue like that. Find by ID and update. So if you want to update the data, you can find it by ID, then pass in the data. All right. Then you go ahead and read, and they go, ChatGPT goes ahead to, Gemini goes ahead to explain what it is doing. All right. So like this has covered 2 hours of class. So my class, because this is like a boot camp, we cannot necessarily teach you everything you need to know. That's why some programs take 9 months. All right, because it's a lot. You get it's a lot. So that's we compress it, try to tell you what you need to know, right? The fundamentals, I use that word. And then you need to go out and research and take your time to dig in, to digging into these things. All right. So this is one way that you can learn. I use this a lot. All right, even in school. So I have like a complex formula that I need to understand. I'll just go to ChatGPT, see this formula. This formula is under this topic, blah, 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 blah. Break it down to me like I'm 5 years old, and boom, I get my result and I read through. I'm like, oh, okay, this thing is not that hard anyways. And I've learned it. All right. So this is one way that you can learn, apart from using YouTube videos. This is one way you can learn. All right. So having said that, let's actually do some things. So I'm going to clean up my code base. All right. So what do I mean? Now we could have we could have different routes. Okay, we will have different routes. We could have so this is a shelf, right? So, and in a shelf, it's a shelf because I called it a shelf. Let's check our data URI. If you go to .env, you see that the name of our database is actually shelf view. Okay, so it's a shelf, and the shelf can have books. We can even call it library, whatever. You could have books. You could have um, um, documentations. You could have what other kind of books do we have? What documents do we have that you can find in the library? You can have textbooks, right, that are not really, books like that. You have textbooks. You have a lot of books, different types of books, all right? And if that is going to be possible with what we want to do, if it's going to be obtainable in our own database, then we need to be able to handle different types of requests. So for instance, you can go back to app.js, all right? That means we should be able to attend to requests that are coming for slash textbooks, all right, or slash journals or slash documentations. All right, so different requests will be able to handle them. So what that means is that we're going to need different routes. And if we keep writing all the routes inside this file is going to grow very long, very quickly, right? Even without doing so much, it's going to be very long, very quickly. So what can we do? This is where controllers come in, all right? So we're going to, first of all, take these guys, not really controllers. I'm going to talk about routers, but let's first of all separate this into their controllers. So we have our books controller, right? So I'm going to cut this from here, put it in our controller, and say this, we'll call this guy a sync function. What does it do? What does it do? New books. So it creates books. So I'm going to call it creates. Or we could just say create because it's a book controller. So we know it's creating a book, right? So I remove the arrow and I'm going to export module.export be equal to create. Okay, so I'll create that. All right. Some code bases or some code base would use HTTP create, right? Trying to say that, let us know that this is a controller that interacts with the routes, all right? So they will just call it HTTP create. You can choose to follow that convention or you can choose to let your own just be create, all right? So I'm going to come back here. And so if you are following, you see that we will have an error because books does not exist in this file, all right? So who is books? So what we can do is actually get books in this controller file. We have to require books, and that means we'll come out of this folder, all right, and get to models. So you come out of controller, get to models, and get to books. So that should be correct. So I can save now, and here I'm just going to say const books controller equals to require, all right, controller slash books controller. So here I'm going to say books controller dot create. All right, and let's see if that still works, if I've not broken our code. So I go here and I post to books and say beyond order by Peterson to send, and then it is going through. Wow, we didn't break anything. That's okay. We actually broke something. So when you're getting, it says await books is not defined. Books is not defined. Books is not defined. Books is not defined. So let's go back. So books is defined now. What are you talking about? So, oh wait, books is defined, man. So let's try to get this right. So let's do models, books model. All right. So let's go again. Gets. Okay, so books not defined. So let's check our errors properly. Books, wait, books not defined. It said books is not defined. So let's come here, app.js 1120. So app.js 1120. Oh, I see. We're still trying to use books here. So for our gets, we're going to get rid of this from here. Come put it here. We're going to say function get all books. All right, and there you go. We have to export this function, right? And we come here and say books controller.get books, save. And if we try to get, that should now work. All right, so we now have all our books here. Okay, so what I'm doing is I keep following the separation of concerns rule. Okay, so you see that I'm separating concerns. All right, so that is it. Now we might want to create a new folder called routes. So this is what I actually intend to show you guys before I go. Routes. All right, so what routes is going to do for us is that we're going to be managing our routes, all right, in that file. So why do we need that? We can see that every book, all right, this we're repeating /books/books/books/books. Okay, but we can just say that when a request comes to /books, all right, we want to send that route into something else. All right, and this is how it's going to work. So I'm going to say books.routes.js. Okay, so I'm going to put it here like this, and I'll bring in these routes that you see here, these two routes. I'll put it here, and this is what I'm going to do. Of course, I'm going to be importing the book controller, so I need it here. So book controller require, am I correct? Go up here. So that's works, book controller. I'm going to import app because we're making use of app over there. All right, so app. Okay, and just like that, I think we should be good. So what I'm going to do now is to say book router equals to express.router. All right, so book router is gonna, so what you see here is module.export book router. So I'm exporting this router, but then I'm going to say book router.post book router.get instead of app.get. So I don't need app anymore. And /books/books. Okay, so what we could do is even remove /books from here and remove /books from here. So I'm going to save, and I will import this router in my app and say const book router equals require. Nothing hard happening, so just remove your mind from that confusion that you're entering. Nothing difficult happening here, just exporting and importing files. All right, so book.books.route. If I'm correct, yes, I think I am. So I'm going to say book router, and here I'm going to comment this out and say app.use. Does not become a middleware. So when you have anything to /books, use this router. I hope that I have not broken my code. I have, so let's check. Express is not defined where. So I'm going to go back to my book route, and that's true. I'm using Express, but I did not import it. So I'm going to go up and say equals Express equals require Express. Okay. And our code is running, our database is connected. So let's try one more time. So we're going to try to create book. And this is going to be what now? See, purpose-driven life by, is it Wick? Warren? I know it's Warren, but I don't know if it's Rick Wick. All right. So yeah, so I've created my purpose-driven life book, and I can now fetch. And if we check, purpose-driven life is part of our books. So our code is running fine, but now we have a clean code base. If you go to apps, I get rid of this comment, you see now that it's very clean. So what you can now do is, if you want to create for, let's bring this back. If you want to create routes for textbooks, what you can now do is app.use. If the person is coming for textbooks, right, then we want to get a textbook router, sorry. All right. So you use textbook router to handle all textbook routes. You use book router to handle all book routes. That seems good for journal, seems good for documentation. All right. So I'm going to comment this out. And so when you need another route, you have to create that route, right? So this will now be text books. You can use underscore books.routes.js. And then you create your routes just the way we created our book route. If it was journal you needed, you say journal the route, right? Journal the route, and you create your route the way I've created. So I'm going to get rid of this now. So every route, right, has their own handler, which we'll define in the app. All right. And then this app file becomes cleaner. So book controller, we don't need it here anymore. So this becomes, cleaner, and in your routes, that's where you import your controller and finally handle everything you need to handle. So you can now get a book by ID like this ID. All right. So if the person is coming for just a plain get, they can use get all books. If they are coming for something like this, so let's duplicate this to make it clear. So I want to finish by exactly 12:30 because I requested for 30 minutes. I don't want to go over that. All right, so we get all books. Books controller, we can now get book by ID. All right, by ID. And then create that function in our controller. So you come to your controller and you sync function get book by ID. And then you res, and that's it. Take this guy, export it, save, come here and import that guy. So get book by ID. All right. Yeah, that's it. So I save and we have that. Okay. So let's just do something very basic in here. When a user tries to get our book by ID, get book by ID, particular book by ID, we can just report and say book found. Let's remove this just to test that endpoint works. All right, so if I come back here, let's see, get ID, route app, we've registered it. So if I come here and say /1 send books found. All right, that is cool. Okay, so you can now go ahead and complete this function yourself and get the book from so something like const book equals to book await book dot find by ID. think that's correct. I'll say find one. Right, and then in the find one, we can now say we want the ID to be something that the user provides. All right. So ID is going to come from rec.params.id. Okay. And then we send the book to the user. Now, if this doesn't work, you have to solve it yourself because I'm in a hurry. I have 2 minutes left. So let's go to our database and get one ID. I'm going to go to the database here, get one ID, and I'm going to come back here, update this guy to be underscore ID, and come here and say slash this, send, and it worked. Great. So I get the things fall apart book because that's the ID that was provided. Okay, so you can take this and expand it and just go ahead and do some amazing stuff. All right. So thank you so much, guys, for your time. I hope that this class was helpful in some way. Forgive me for being so fast. Please, when you get the video, reduce the speed and, you should be able to get something out of it. Okay, guys, if you have questions, please drop it on Slack and I'll be available to answer them. Thank you so much for your time, guys. I'll see you on
Thank
Friday.
you.